He'd crossed the Sahara on a bike and summited 7 8,000ers without oxygen in record time. A former mayor of a Spanish town, Sergi Mingote, seemed like a cyborg of endurance. But on January 16th, on the slopes of a winter K2, he fell. In a place where seasoned pros normally don't. The ropes were intact, the weather perfect. So what knocked him off his feet? A fatal mistake or a falling rock? This is the story of how a single second shattered a grand vision and claimed the life of a legend. 1971, the small Catalan town of Pares del Vallès. A boy is born here who, 20 years later, would force physiologists to rewrite the textbooks on the limits of human endurance. Sergi Mingote doesn't grow up following the standard script. While his peers pick one sport, he trains in several at once: running, swimming, cycling, skiing. His body becomes a versatile machine, one that knows how to endure pain and push itself to the brink. His coaches shake their heads. It's too much of a load for one body. But Sergi is stubborn. He can feel his limit is somewhere further out, beyond a horizon others don't even try to see. 1995, an alpine slope. Mingote gets on his mountain bike and plummets downhill at 100.7 kilometers per hour. It's a world record. Adrenaline, wind in his face, rocks under the tires, one mistake, and it's all over. But he holds the handlebars in an iron grip. At the bottom, he's met with applause and a new title. One of the fastest men on the planet on 2 wheels. But now, speed isn't enough for him. He wants distance. The Sahara, an ocean of sand where the temperature melts asphalt. The Gobi, a desert of rock. Mingote crosses them by bike, kilometer after kilometer, day after day. There's no romance here, just heat, thirst, and the question: how much more can the body take? Then come Ironman and Ultraman, races where only a handful finish. A 3.86-kilometer swim, 180 on the bike, a 42-kilometer run, and that's just the beginning. The Ultraman doubles those distances. The body screams, "Stop!" But Mingote has learned to ignore that scream. He finishes, again and again. Sponsors take notice, journalists line up for interviews, but Sergi is already looking higher. The late 90s. He stands at the foot of the Himalayas and realizes, this is it, the real test. Not speed, not distance, altitude, a place where air becomes a luxury, and every step feels like it could be your last. Most climbers use supplemental oxygen. Mingote refuses. Why wear a mask when you can teach your lungs to work at their absolute limit? 1998. Cho Oyu, the world's 6th highest peak at 8,201 meters. They call it the easy one for newcomers to the 8,000er club. But without oxygen, it becomes pure torture. A splitting headache, legs that feel like lead, a heart pounding out of his chest. Mingote just keeps going, meter by meter. At the summit, he stays for a few minutes, takes a photo, and heads down. No euphoria, just cold, hard calculation. Step 1, complete. 1999, Shishapangma, 8,027 meters. The 14th highest of the 8,000ers, but a treacherous one. Avalanches, crevasses, unpredictable weather. Even the most experienced climbers, with dozens of successful ascents to their name, have lost their lives here. Mingote is climbing without oxygen again. His heart rate is through the roof, but he's used to pushing his limits. All those years competing in Ironman triathlons and trekking through deserts, they weren't for nothing. He reaches the summit. That's the second one checked off the list. Physiologists are starting to study him like some kind of phenomenon. His heart, his lungs, his mitochondria, they all function on a completely different level than the average person's. Mingote is building the foundation that, a decade later, will enable him to take on the most dangerous routes on the planet. But he doesn't know that yet. For now, he's just climbing, higher and higher and higher. With 2 8,000ers under his belt, Mingote knows it's time to take on the one that calls to them all, Everest, 8,849 meters. The roof of the world, a place where glory is measured not in words, but in altitude. The year is 2001. He chooses the Tibetan side, the northern route. It's a technically easier climb than the south route, but psychologically, it's brutal. Endless fields of snow, a wind so strong it can knock you off your feet, and that final ridge where every single step is a gamble. Mingote climbs without a dedicated partner, moving with the main flow of the expedition, using the fixed ropes and taking supplemental oxygen. It's not pure alpinism in the classic sense, but on Everest, the rules are different. Here, survival trumps style. He makes it to the summit, the Catalan flag in his hands, a photo against an endless sky. Mingote makes it back down alive, and that alone is a victory, because the slopes of Everest are littered with those who overestimated their own strength, or underestimated the mountain. He returns to Barcelona a hero. The press is all over him. Sponsors are lining up. But Sergi knows. One Everest isn't enough. He needs to cement his success. 2003. He returns to the roof of the world, but this time from the south, through Nepal, the Hillary and Tenzing route, the classic high-altitude ascent. First, the Khumbu Icefall, a treacherous maze of massive ice blocks that could collapse at any moment. Then, the Yellow Band, a vertical rock face where your rope is your only lifeline. And finally, the South Col, a deathly plateau where tents shred in the wind, and oxygen depletes faster than you can ever plan for. And once again, Mingote makes the ascent. He uses bottled oxygen, follows the fixed ropes, and relies on the infrastructure of commercial expeditions. For the purists, it's a compromise. But Sergi isn't interested in playing by the purists' rules. He's playing a different game entirely, the media game. And on this climb, he has an ace up his sleeve that will change everything. At the summit of Everest, he pulls out satellite gear, a camera, a transmitter, an antenna. The Catalan channel TV3 is about to launch the first ever live broadcast from the highest point on Earth. People at home, sitting on their couches, are about to see something that was once reserved for only a handful of adventurers. Mingote speaks to the camera, gasping in the thin air. His face is flushed, his lips are cracked, but his eyes are blazing with life. This isn't just a climb, it's a performance, and Sergi is the star, and all of Spain falls in love with him. He's not just a mountaineer, he's a storyteller, someone who can transform suffering into a compelling narrative, and pure risk into a spectacle. He's invited onto talk shows, he speaks at conferences, he writes articles. Mingote becomes the face of high-altitude mountaineering in a country that has mountains, but none that reach the 8,000-meter mark. He builds his brand, and he's unapologetic about being commercial, because expeditions cost money. A lot of money. And without sponsors, without media coverage, without a few compromises, you're not getting to the Himalayas. During this time, Sergi isn't trying to be some kind of purist. He uses oxygen, fixed ropes, and the support of Sherpas. This is his era of accumulation, of experience, connections, and resources. He's studying Everest from every angle, learning the logistics, figuring out how to work with the altitude not as an enemy, but as a partner. The purists might scoff, but Mingote doesn't pay them any mind. He has his own plan, and he's just getting started. 2003. Mingote finds himself at a crossroads. To one side, the Himalayas, endless climbs, the fame of a mountaineer. To the other, an office, paperwork, and the very real power to change people's lives. He chooses the latter. He enrolls at ESAID, one of Europe's top business schools. Sergi isn't just going back to school for a piece of paper to hang on the wall. He's there for the tools. Project management, finance, strategic planning, the kind of skills you don't learn on the slopes of an 8,000er. He finishes the program and jumps straight into politics. The Socialist Party of Catalonia opens its doors to him. Mingote is a familiar face, a charismatic athlete with a story of overcoming adversity. He's the perfect candidate. His first role is as a sports counselor in his hometown of Pares del Valles. It's a small town, 20,000 people, with small-town problems. Some might call it a step down after Everest, but Mingote sees it differently. Here, he can build infrastructure, open sports centers, create programs for young people. It's not about adrenaline, it's about influence. Not about summits, but about foundations. He works like a man possessed. Meetings, board sessions, budgets, negotiations. The endurance he built in the deserts and at high altitude is now being tested in office marathons. His colleagues wonder, where does he get all that energy? Sergi just smiles. After Shishapangma, Any budget meeting feels like a walk in the park. 2011, the mayoral election, Mingote wins. Now he's not just a councillor, he's the mayor, the #1 person in town. His responsibility multiplies 100-fold. Every decision is under a microscope. Every mistake makes the front page of the local papers. The Himalayas fade into the background, then further still, until they disappear completely behind a horizon of administrative routine. 7 years pass. Not a single expedition to an 8,000er. Mingote doesn't touch his climbing gear. He doesn't plan any routes. He doesn't check the weather forecasts in Nepal. His friends from the climbing world ask him, "So, that's it? You've hung up your boots?" His answers are non-committal. Maybe it's a new chapter. Politics, family, stability. But the body remembers. He keeps training, biking, running, skiing, the same endurance sports that built him up 20 years ago. He keeps his heart rate high. His lungs never forget how to work at their limit. His colleagues at City Hall don't get it. Why the insane workouts at 5 in the morning before a full day of work? Mingote doesn't explain. He just pedals, just runs, just stays in shape. But inside, something is still smoldering. Politics brings results, but it doesn't give him that feeling he had on the summits. Up there, everything was simple. You either make it to the top or you don't. You're either alive or you're dead. Down here, everything's a blur. Compromises, coalitions, endless negotiations. He's a good mayor. The city is thriving, but his soul is craving something more. 7 years is a lifetime for a climber. In the mountains, that's enough time for a whole generation to pass. New names emerge, new records are set, new tragedies unfold. And Mingote watches it all from the sidelines. He reads the expedition reports, stares at photos of snow-covered slopes, and he knows it isn't over. This is just a pause, a long, forced one, but a pause nonetheless. The year is 2018. Mingote sits in his mayoral office and writes his letter of resignation. It's entirely his decision. No scandals, no pressure, just a choice. His colleagues are in shock. His career is on the rise. Regional politics, maybe even parliament, is next. But Sergi just shakes his head. 7 years behind a desk is long enough. It's time to go where the air is thin, and life isn't measured in terms of office, but in meters above sea level. He's 47 years old, an age when most high-altitude climbers are already hanging up their boots or switching to trekking. But Mingote looks at the numbers and sees a window of opportunity, a narrow one that's closing fast, but it's still open. He pulls out a list of the planet's 14 8,000ers and draws a chart. Next to it, he writes a number, 1,000 days. Less than 3 years for all the summits. The project gets its name, 14D's 1000 Catalonia. This isn't just ambition. It's a direct challenge to the record set by the Korean climber Kim Chang-ho, 7 years and 10 months to climb all the 8,000ers. Mingote wants to do it in almost a third of the time. His friends think he's lost his mind. Sponsors are wary, but Sergi is unshakable. He has the foundation for it. 2 8,000ers already under his belt. Years of extreme endurance and iron discipline. And most importantly, he has a plan. But that plan comes with one radical condition. No supplemental oxygen, no tanks, no masks, no artificial support. Just his own lungs, his own heart, his own will. This is a complete 180 from his Everest expeditions in the early 2000s. Back then, he climbed with oxygen and made no apologies for it. Now, he's refusing it. Point blank. Mingote explains it to journalists this way. Without oxygen, you're on a ticking clock. Every minute you spend at that altitude drains your resources. You can't wait for good weather. You can't rest for days in the death zone. You either move fast and decisively, or you die. It's about honesty of style. It's real alpinism. The purists applaud. Commercial guides just shake their heads. It's too risky. But Sergi isn't listening anymore. He trains like a man possessed. Trail running in the mountains, cycling up winding roads, setting up high-altitude camps in the Alps. His body, at nearly 50, is performing like that of a pro in his 30s. The mitochondria, honed by decades of intense exertion, are squeezing every last molecule of oxygen from air that has almost none. At the same time, he gets an official status. Mingote becomes an ambassador for the Pyrenees-Barcelona 2030 Olympic bid. Catalonia is dreaming of hosting the Winter Games, and the face of their bid is a climber taking on the world's highest peaks. It's the perfect media story. Sponsors start lining up. The funding starts to roll in. The logistics fall into place, and the project begins. Mingote publishes a map with 14 points marked on it. Next to each one, the altitude, the difficulty, and the weather window. He's studying routes, analyzing fatality rates, coordinating with Sherpas, and mapping out the calendar. 1,000 days. That's not a marathon. It's a sprint through thin air, where a single mistake can cost you your life. The summer of 2018. Islamabad, Pakistan. Mingote steps off the plane and feels that familiar mix of heat and anticipation. He hasn't been in the Himalayas for 7 years. 7 years of office life, of meetings, of compromises. Now, ahead of him lies the Karakoram, a mountain range considered even more brutal than Nepal's 8,000ers. Wilder, more isolated, more deadly. The first objective, Broad Peak. 8,051 meters, the 12th highest peak on the planet. It's nicknamed the Broad Mountain for its massive summit plateau. Technically, it's more accessible than K2, but that doesn't mean it's safe. Every season, bodies are left behind, climbers who misjudged the weather or overestimated their own limits. Mingote climbs without oxygen, slow, methodical, keeping a steady rhythm. His body is coming back to life, like an old engine that's been sitting in the garage for years, but hasn't forgotten how to run. His lungs burn, his head is pounding, but he pushes on. Step, breathe in. Step, breathe out. High altitude camps, fixed ropes, the final summit, push. The summit, the flag of Catalonia. A photograph, the descent. Normally, after summiting an 8,000er, climbers would rest for weeks. The body demands recovery. The altitude burns through your reserves like fire through dry grass. But Mingote has no time to rest. He has 1,000 days, and K2 is right there, waiting. The second highest mountain on Earth, 8,611 meters of pure, raw fury. They call it the Savage Mountain, the Killer Mountain. The death toll is staggering, 1 death for every 4 successful summits. Legends have died on this mountain. Entire expeditions have been crushed. K2 does not forgive mistakes. Mingote descends Broad Peak, spends the absolute minimum time at base camp, and then heads for the neighboring mountain. 7 days between the 2 summits. In the world of classic mountaineering, that's insane. The body has no time to recover, but Mingote knows a secret. His endurance base is so deep that he can run on a physical debt that most people could never repay. K2 greets him with wind and bone-chilling cold, the Abruzzi Spur. It's the classic route, but it's a brutal one. The bottleneck, at 8,200 meters, a narrow couloir where climbers get jammed up, creating queues that bleed away precious minutes and oxygen. Mingote is climbing without supplemental oxygen. It gives him an advantage. He's lighter, more mobile, and isn't tied to a schedule of swapping tanks. But it's also a huge risk. 1 delay in the bottleneck and his time is up. The weather is fickle. Winds are tearing tents apart. The temperature plummets to -40. Other teams are retreating, waiting for a clear window. Mingote checks the forecast and sees a short gap, a few hours of relative calm. It's all he needs. He begins the final push. Night. His headlamp slices through the pitch black. Every step is an agony. His lungs are screaming for air. His hands grip the rope mechanically, almost without thought. His mind is hazy, but pure instinct keeps him moving forward. The bottleneck, a narrow passage of rock and ice. Mingote squeezes through, never stopping. The final ridge. Dawn breaks, painting the horizon crimson. The summit of K2. He stands on the second highest point on Earth, looking down on Broad Peak. 7 days ago, he was there. Now, he's here. 2 8,000ers in a single week without oxygen. No one had ever done that before. A world record. But Mingote feels no sense of triumph, only exhaustion, and a realization. This is working. The plan is real. The descent is its own special kind of hell. His legs are buckling, his vision is doubling. Back at base camp, he's greeted like a hero. The Spanish media is erupting with news of the record. The climbing community is rewriting the odds. Mingote, a 50-year-old politician coming off a 7-year break, has just proved that he didn't just return, he returned stronger. 2 of the 14 8,000ers are ticked off, 12 to go. 993 days on the clock. The Karakoram is behind him. Ahead lie Nepal, Tibet, and the planet's most dangerous mountains. Autumn 2018. Mingote hasn't even had time to recover from the Karakoram, but the calendar is already dictating the next move. Manaslu, 8,163 meters, the 8th highest peak on the planet. Nepal, a different country, different logistics, a different climate. But the goal is the same, to climb without oxygen and keep the momentum going. Manaslu is considered one of the more accessible 8,000ers. It's often chosen for a first experience at that altitude. But accessible doesn't mean safe. Avalanches, crevasses, high-altitude sickness, they're all in play here too. Every season, the list of those who didn't make it back grows longer. Mingote flies into base camp and gets straight into the rhythm. No long acclimatization, no weeks spent waiting. 10 days from arrival to summit. It's an aggressive timeline even for seasoned climbers using oxygen. Without it, it borders on reckless. But Sergi knows his body. The Karakoram has left him freshly adapted. His system still remembers how to work in the thin air. He moves up, camp by camp. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one higher, colder, harder. The Sherpas set the route, fix the ropes, and organize the supplies. Mingote follows in their footsteps, and he makes no secret of it. After his descent, he publicly thanks the Sherpa team. He names them. He highlights their contribution. This is a rarity among Western climbers. Many prefer to downplay the role of the high-altitude porters, creating an illusion of a solo achievement. But Sergi plays it straight. He's not claiming to be a solo artist. He uses the infrastructure, he acknowledges the support, but he adds his own twist, speed, an oxygen-free style, and flawless execution of the plan. 10 days, summit, descent. The third 8,000er of 2018. 3 peaks in just a few months. The 14 by 1000 project is ahead of schedule. Spain is ecstatic. The Catalan media are hailing him as a national hero. Sponsors are upping their funding. But Mingote isn't getting caught up in the glory. He has a bigger idea. If he's already getting money and attention, why not channel it into something more? He founds the ONAT Foundation, the mission, to promote the inclusion of people with disabilities through sport. Programs in adaptive mountaineering, trekking, and cycling. He's bringing in coaches, partnering with sports centers, putting on events. This isn't just for show. It's an extension of his political work, but taken to a whole new level. At the same time, he launches the Solidarity Project, a social initiative that connects his athletic achievements with charity. Now, every climb isn't just another box to tick off a list. It's a chance to shine a light on important issues, to raise funds, to inspire people. Mingote is turning mountaineering into a tool for social change. His friends ask him, "Why are you doing this? You've got enough on your plate already. The training, the expeditions, the sponsor commitments. Why add foundations and projects to all that?" Sergi's answer is simple. Because I can. Because the summits, they're not the end goal. They're a way to show that our limits only exist in our minds. If a guy from a small Catalan town can stand on top of K2, then anyone, regardless of their physical abilities, can conquer their own personal Everest. The year 2018 ends in triumph. 3 8,000ers ticked off the list. Records broken, the foundation launched. The project is gaining international recognition. Mingote is back home in Pares del Valles, looking at a map marked with 14 peaks. He crosses off 3 of them, 11 to go. The clock is ticking, but he's set the right pace. Ahead lies 2019. Ahead lie new mountains, and a new test of his limits. Spring 2019. Nepal, Lhotse, 8,516 meters, the 4th highest peak on the planet. It's right next to Everest, sharing the same route up to the South Pole, but its final wall is a different beast, vertical, icy, and unforgiving. Mingote chooses it as his next target, the 4th 8,000er. He's on schedule. This time, he's not alone. He's with Ivan Tomov, a Bulgarian mountaineer, experienced, reliable, tested at high altitudes. They've known each other for a few years, climbed together in the Alps. They trust each other completely. Tomov also prefers to climb without supplemental oxygen. They're a perfect team. The plan is simple. Get to the top, get back down, bag the summit, and move on to the next one. A weather window opens up. They make their push for the summit. Lhotse greets them with its ice wall, 1,200 meters of near vertical ascent. There's almost no oxygen in the air. Every single step is a battle against gravity, a battle against their own bodies. Mingote and Tomov move in sync, securing each other, exchanging only short, breathless phrases. The summit, hugs, photographs, the fourth 8,000er of Mingote's project. Everything is going according to plan. The descent begins normally. They're exhausted, of course, but it's a manageable exhaustion. They make their way down the first few hundred meters when Tomov starts to slow down. Mingote turns around. The Bulgarian is clutching his head, his movements becoming uncoordinated. Cerebral edema, a form of altitude sickness that can kill faster than an avalanche. Mingote grabs his partner. He shouts, tries to shake him awake. Tomov's replies are slurred, incoherent. They have to get down, now. Every minute at this altitude makes it worse. Sergi starts the descent, practically dragging Tomov's dead weight. The Bulgarian is heavy, exhausted, unconsciously fighting against him. Mingote is running on pure instinct. Adrenaline, fear, desperation, it all blends into one. Suddenly a sound from above. Rockfall. Ice and rock rain down the mountain face. Mingote throws himself in front of Tomov, shielding him with his own body. An impact. A sharp, searing pain in his chest. The distinct crack of a rib breaking. He can't get a breath, but he doesn't let go of his partner. He keeps lowering him. Meter by agonizing meter. Camp 4, then Camp 3. Tomov slips into unconsciousness for good. At the high-altitude camp, Mingote gets him into a tent, tries to give him fluids, some medicine. He radios for help, but helicopters can't fly this high. Sherpas are on their way up, but they're too slow. Tomov's breathing is heavy, ragged. Mingote sits beside him, holding his hand, telling him it's going to be okay, but he knows it's a lie. In the end, Ivan Tomov dies in the tent from cerebral edema. Mingote stares at the lifeless body and feels something inside him shatter. Not his rib, something much deeper. They went up together. They were supposed to come down together. But there's no fairness at this altitude. The descent to base camp is a complete haze. His broken rib screams with every breath. But the physical pain is nothing compared to the storm raging in his mind. Mingote gives an interview. His voice cracks. He says it bluntly. I'm mentally broken. I've lost my focus. I can't continue. The expedition is over. The 14 by 1000 project grinds to a halt. Sponsors are left reeling. The Catalan press runs Tomov's obituary alongside articles speculating that Mingote's career might be finished. 4 of the 14 8,000ers summited, 10 to go. But what does any of that matter when the price is your friend's life? Mingote returns to Spain. He just sits at home, staring at a map. He doesn't cross off Lhotse, even though he technically summited. Instead, next to its name, he writes another. Ivan Tomov. His rib will heal. But the question lingers. Is it worth it to keep going? How can you move forward when your partner is still up there, in a tent at 8,000 meters? And if he does continue, how does he live with that? Summer 2019. He buys a ticket to Pakistan, back to the Karakoram, back to the 8,000ers. But this time, he's a different climber, quieter, more focused. No grand statements, no promises, just the work. The first objective, Nanga Parbat, 8,126 meters, the 9th highest peak in the world. They call it the Killer Mountain. Pre-war German expeditions lost entire teams on its slopes. The Rupel face on its southern side is the tallest mountain face on the planet, 4,500 meters of sheer vertical terror. Mingote opts for the easier route from the north, but easy is a very relative term up here. He climbs without supplemental oxygen, a light pack, minimal gear, nothing extra, no dead weight. At this altitude, every gram feels like a kilogram. Mingote moves fast, methodically, conserving every ounce of energy. He moves through the high camps without stopping. He doesn't need to acclimatize again. His body remembers. It remembers Lhotse, the Karakoram, all the summits that came before, the summit of Nanga Parbat, his fifth 8,000er. Mingote stands at the top, gazing out at the horizon, and thinks of Tomov. This one's for you, Ivan. The descent is fast, clean, uneventful. He spends as little time as possible at base camp. He packs his gear, hails a jeep, and heads for the airport. 2 weeks later, he's already at the foot of another mountain. Gasherbrum 2, 8,035 meters. The world's 13th highest mountain. It's part of the Gasherbrum Massif, a cluster that includes 4 8,000ers. G2 is considered technically easier than its big brother, G1, but at this altitude, the height takes its toll. The thin air, the biting cold, the avalanche-prone slopes. It's the standard package for this elevation. 15 days between climbs. That's an aggressive schedule, even by the standards of the 14 by 1000 project. The body just doesn't have time to fully recover, but Mingote knows he has a window. The weather in the Karakoram is fickle, and the summer season is short. You have to make every single day count. He tackles G2 in the same style, light, fast, with no excess gear, minimal food, minimal fuel, minimal time spent at each camp. It's a hit-and-run strategy, but for mountaineering. The Sherpas break the trail, fixing the ropes. As always, Mingote thanks them by name. He follows in their footsteps, but adds his own signature touch, a pace that very few can match. The summit, his 6th 8,000er. Halfway through the summer of 2019, and that's 2 peaks down. As Mingote descends, he allows himself a smile. The first one since Lhotse, 6 out of 14. Less than halfway, but the momentum is back. The project is alive. The Catalan media explodes with headlines. Mingote's comeback after the tragedy. 6 peaks in a year, a new speed record. Sponsors are calling, congratulating him, discussing the next steps. But Sergi no longer reacts to the noise. He's learned to tune out the outside world. All that exists are the mountains, the roots, and the clock. Back at base camp, he pulls out his notebook and crosses off Nanga Parbat and Gasherbrum 2. He jots down the dates. He calculates the days remaining on his 1,000-day deadline. The math is brutal. He needs to pick up the pace. 8 peaks in the time he has left. That means minimal breaks, maximum risk, and hitting the weather windows perfectly every single time. Mingote looks at the list of mountains still to climb. Everest, Kangchenjunga, Makalu, Annapurna, Dhaulagiri, Gasherbrum 1, Shishapangma, Cho, Oyu. Each one with its own personality, its own dangers, its own death toll. But there's no choice. The clock is ticking. Autumn 2019, Nepal, Dhaulagiri. 8,167 meters, the 7th highest peak on the planet. Its name translates to White Mountain, a massive isolated giant surrounded by deep gorges. Its death rate is one of the highest among the 8,000ers. Avalanches, rock falls, sudden storms. Dhaulagiri does not forgive carelessness. Mingote arrives at base camp and meets Juan Pablo Moore, a Chilean, an ambitious climber who also climbs without supplemental oxygen. They know each other from previous expeditions and trust each other's technical skills. They decide to rope up together. After what happened with Tomov, Sergi is cautious about partners, but climbing an 8,000er alone is an even greater risk. The autumn weather in the Himalayas is a game of roulette. The summer monsoon has retreated, but the winter storms are already closing in. The windows are short and unpredictable. Mingote and Moore study the forecasts, consulting with other teams. Everyone is doubtful. It's just too unstable. But the calendar is pressing. The project's clock doesn't wait for perfect conditions. They make a decision. They start their summit push. They move through the first few camps without any issues. But as they approach the summit zone, they make a mistake. They settle on a couloir, a steep corridor of snow and ice that should take them right up to the ridge. On paper, the route makes perfect sense. In reality, it's a trap. The couloir is steeper than they expected. The snow is loose with a layer of ice underneath. Their gear won't hold. The ropes keep slipping. Every single step is a risk of falling and dragging your partner down with you. Mingote and more stop to assess the situation. Turning back means losing a day, maybe their entire weather window. Pushing forward means risking their lives. They look at each other, a silent nod. They push on. The couloir stretches on endlessly. Their hands are numb from the cold and the strain. Their legs are buckling from exhaustion and the lack of oxygen. Reaching the ridge is like a gasp of air after being choked. The terrain gets easier, but the weather gets worse. The wind picks up and visibility drops. Mingote checks his altimeter. Less than 100 meters to the summit. More nods. Turning back after a climb like this, it's unthinkable. October 1st, 2019. The summit of Dhaulagiri. They're standing in a blizzard, hugging, shouting something to each other. But the wind drowns out their words. The photos are just a blur. The wind whips their flags so violently they can barely hold on to them. But they've made the summit. Mingote's 7th 8,000er. Half the project is complete. The descent is a whole other story. They choose a different route, bypassing the dangerous couloir. They move in the dark, navigating by the tracks of other teams. A few times, they sink into snow up to their waists. Moore twists his leg, but keeps going. Mingote leads, shouting encouragement, pulling the rope team down. By dawn, they stumble into camp, alive, in one piece, and unbelievably lucky. Back at base camp, Sergi gives an interview. His voice is hoarse, his face is wind-burned, but his eyes are honest. We pushed the line of acceptable risk. We made a mistake with the route. We were lucky not to pay for it with our lives. The climbing community is divided. Was it courage or recklessness? Some applaud his honesty, others just shake their heads. Mingote doesn't argue. He knows that on an 8,000er, luck is more important than skill. You can be the best climber in the world, but if an avalanche lets go at the wrong second, you're dead. Tomov was experienced. He died. He and Moore took a foolish risk. They survived. Where's the justice in that? There is none. There's only statistics and luck. 7 peaks out of 14. 444 days since the project began. Half the time, gone. Half the goals, achieved. The math is perfect. But the most dangerous ones still lie ahead. Annapurna with its avalanches. Kangchenjunga with its sheer walls. Everest with its crowds and unpredictability. Every peak to come isn't just about altitude. It's an exam that many fail, fatally. Mingote looks at his list. He crosses off Dhaulagiri. Next to it, he writes 2 words. On the edge. He closes the notebook. 7 peaks. 7 times he might not have come back. 7 times he did. How much longer can his luck hold out? Spring 2020. Mingote is at home in Catalonia, watching the news in disbelief. The world is shutting down. Borders are slamming shut, one after another. Nepal announces a ban on all expeditions. Pakistan follows suit. China is silent, but no permits for Tibet are being issued. COVID-19 achieves what weather, avalanches, and altitude sickness never could. It brings mountaineering to a dead stop. Annapurna and Manaslu were on the books for the spring. Tickets were bought, permits secured, the team was ready to go. And now, it's all in the trash. Mingote calls his organizers, his sponsors, trying to find some kind of loophole. Maybe he could get in through Pakistan, a private expedition? But the answer is no, every time. The Himalayas are closed, indefinitely. He pulls out his calculator. 7 summits in 444 days. That was the perfect pace to hit his 1,000-day goal. But if the spring season is lost, if summer is a question mark, if autumn goes up in smoke too, the entire plan collapses. The timer keeps ticking, and he's stuck in Europe with nowhere to go. So, Mingote makes a call. He officially changes the project's goal, 14 peaks in 4 years, instead of 1,000 days. It would still be a record. No one has ever conquered all the 8,000ers in that short of a time. But it's a compromise. A bitter pill to swallow, but a realistic one. The only other option? To give it all up and wait for, well, who knows what. The new goal is set. But what does he do now? Sit at home, get out of shape, and watch his muscles and lungs atrophy? For Mingote, That's not an option. If it can't be the Himalayas, it has to be something else. Something that will keep his body in fighting shape. He digs out his bicycle, the very same one he set a speed record on 20 years earlier. He pulls out maps of Europe and starts planning a route, 7,000 kilometers through 7 countries. He calls the project the Olympic Route in support of Barcelona's bid for the Winter Games. Symbolism, PR, a social mission. It has everything he loves. But the main thing is the physical toll. Mingote leaves Catalonia and just starts pedaling, day in, day out. Through the Alps, the Pyrenees, across valleys and over passes. The roads are empty. Lockdown has everyone confined to their homes. He's riding solo with just a backpack and a tent, pushing 150 to 200 kilometers every single day. His heart rate is high, his lungs are working overtime, and his muscles are adapting to the relentless pressure. Along the way, he stops at mountains and climbs their peaks. Not the 8,000ers, of course. These are the Alpine 4,000ers, Mont Blanc, the Matterhorn, Gran Paradiso, the great classics of European alpinism. In just a few months, he ticks off 20 summits. It's all about training, acclimatization, keeping his skills sharp. Every single climb is a dress rehearsal for his return to the Himalayas. The European media picks up the story. The headlines practically write themselves. Mountaineer, grounded by the pandemic, cycles across the continent. Soon there are interviews, articles, news reports. Mingote does his press on the move, through video calls, often out of breath as he grinds up another climb. He's turned this forced downtime into a whole project of its own. The lesson? If you can't take the direct path to your goal, you take the long way around. His sponsors are watching, and this calms their nerves. The project is alive and well. Mingote isn't giving up. He's adapting, shifting his strategy, and keeping his brand afloat. The funding keeps rolling in, contracts get extended. His ONAT Foundation launches online programs. Since people can't play sports in person, they'll do it virtually. By autumn, Mingote completes his cycling marathon. The final tally, 7,000 kilometers, 20 alpine peaks, and dozens of meetings and talks. His body is conditioned, his head is clear. But the main question still hangs in the air. When will the Himalayas finally open up? He's following the news from Nepal. He's reading the climbing forums. He's on the phone with expedition organizers. The rumors are all over the place. Some say spring of 2021 is a go. Others are shaking their heads, saying not before 2022. The uncertainty eats away at you more than the high altitude. Winter 2021, the borders finally open, and the floodgates burst. The climbing world, starved after a year in lockdown, rushes to Pakistan. All eyes are on one place, K2, the last great prize, the only 8,000er yet to be conquered in winter. In summer, this mountain kills 1 in 4. In winter, it becomes a frozen hell. Temperatures of minus 60 degrees, hurricane-force winds, unpredictable avalanches. Any mistake is fatal. But this season, ambition eclipses fear. Base camp looks like a disturbed anthill. 60 climbers, a record number for a winter expedition. And this isn't some well-oiled special forces team. It's a motley crew, the world's climbing elite, mixed in with commercial clients, the kind of people who've paid big money and expect service. Even in the death zone, at the center of this chaos is Sergi Mingote. He isn't just here as an athlete. He's the co-leader of the 7 Summit Treks expedition, the largest operator on the mountain. His role is twofold, and it's a trap. On one hand, he has to coordinate this massive operation, manage logistics, and calm down clients. On the other, he's a purist, aiming for his 8th 8,000er without supplemental oxygen. By day, he's solving problems in camp, organizing gear, arguing with guides. But in the back of his mind, he's on his own clock, committed to his own style. Mingote has even brought his own mission with him. Tucked away in his duffel bags are 280 kilograms of gear for the local porters. Jackets, boots, thermal underwear. He helps them, shakes their hands, shares a smile. But it does little to change the atmosphere in camp. The mountain is overcrowded. Experts are shaking their heads in horror, talking about bottlenecks on the narrow sections of the route. Imagine a traffic jam at an altitude where the air is already stretched to its limit. One person gets stuck, and everyone has to wait. Getting colder, losing strength, burning through precious resources. The tension hangs in the air, thicker than the fog. Who will go first? Who's going to fix the ropes? Whose clients get priority? By mid-January, the chaos reaches its peak. And it's in these conditions, under the weight of responsibility and the pressure of others' ambitions, that Mingote sets out on his final acclimatization climb. January 16th, 2021. The Nepalese team is already on the summit, writing their names into the history books, claiming the first winter ascent of K2. The whole climbing world is buzzing, social media is exploding, but Sergi Mingote is on his own schedule. At that moment, he's at 7,000 meters in Camp 3. His acclimatization is complete. The plan is clear: descend to base camp, rest, recover, and wait for a weather window for the final summit push. The descent is along the Abruzzi Spur, the classic line forged by decades of expeditions. With Sergi as his partner, Juan Pablo Moore from Chile. They're a solid team, they've climbed Dhaulagiri together, they trust each other implicitly. The weather is perfect for winter. Clear skies, temperatures around minus 25 degrees, and almost no wind. It seemed like the worst was over. After all, a descent after an acclimatization run is just routine. It was technical work they'd done hundreds of times. They passed Camp 1 at an altitude of about 6,000 meters. Ahead of them lies the section up to Advanced Base Camp, or ABC. It's a long slope, not the steepest on the mountain, maybe 40-50 degrees. But in winter, it turns into a mirror. The wind has scoured the snow away, leaving only blue ice, as hard as concrete and as slippery as glass. Your crampons have to bite into it, hard. Every single step demands your full attention. Mingote is just behind Moore. They're moving along the fixed lines, stationary ropes anchored to the slope, a lifeline. You're clipped in, you're safe. Or so it seems. Because it's right here, on a section many consider almost routine, that the mountain decides to remind them who's in charge. No storms, no avalanches, just an icy slope, a clear sky, and a single second that changes everything. Mingote falls. He's come detached from the fixed line and begins to slide. It seems impossible. Later, experts and Sherpas would inspect the gear. The ropes on this section were perfectly intact, the anchors secure. There was no equipment failure. So what happened? There are two theories, and both are terrifying. Either it was a tiny error while switching his carabiner, that split second when you unclip from one rope to clip onto the next, and you lose your balance. Exhausted hands, bulky mittens, hypoxia, it's all working against you. Or it was an external force. Juan Pablo Moore would later suggest that Sergi might have been struck by a rock, a stray projectile that flew down from above, stunning him or simply knocking him off his feet. Moore hears a noise behind him, the unnatural sound of a body sliding on the hard ice. He whips around and sees his friend gaining speed. The Chilean screams in desperation, "Try to self-arrest! Brake! Stop!" But on a slope like this, physics is merciless. On the concrete hard blue ice of K2, a self-arrest is virtually impossible. The ice axe just skips across the surface. The crampons can't get a purchase. If you're not clipped in, you fall. The acceleration is instant. Mingote plummets down the couloir for about 600 meters. It's a long, uncontrolled fall that ends far, far below, near Advanced Base Camp. Silence returns to the slope as suddenly as it vanished. An alarm blares on a screen. Sergi's GPS tracker is registering a blood-chilling anomaly, an impossible descent speed, and then an instant dead stop. This isn't an electronic glitch. This is a catastrophe. The first to scramble toward the impact site, near Advanced Base Camp, are those who were nearby, the Romanian, Alex Gavon, and the Italian, Tamara Lunger. From above, risking a fall himself, Juan Pablo Moore makes his way down to them. They find Sergi on the snow. He is still breathing, but in a deep coma. His injuries are critical, his body shattered by the fall from 600 meters. Gavin and Lunger try to administer first aid, shouting into their radios, calling for a doctor. A medical team with oxygen immediately sets out from the main base camp. But the distance is simply too great. There's almost no time left. About 40 minutes, that's it. 40 minutes of pure helplessness in the middle of an icy wasteland. Sergi never regains consciousness. The whole time, Juan Pablo Moore holds his best friend in his arms, talking to him, trying to keep him warm, staying with him right until the very end. The doctor from base camp doesn't get there in time. Sergi Mingote's heart stops on the slopes of the very mountain he so desperately wanted to conquer. The news spreads across the globe in an instant, but it carries a bitter sting. Mingote's death comes on the exact same day that an Apeli team is celebrating their historic first-ever winter ascent of K2. Headlines around the world blare with a cruel contrast: triumph and tragedy. History was made, but it came at a terrible price. But for Juan Pablo Moore, the story doesn't end with evacuating his friend's body. He makes the gut-wrenching decision to stay and continue the climb, dedicating it to Sergi's memory. It was a tribute that would prove to be fatal. Just a few weeks later, on February 5th, Moore vanishes without a trace during the summit push, forever lost to the mountain, along with his climbing partner. Back in his hometown of Paredes de Valles, their grief is cast in bronze. The town erects a monument, a sculpture of an eagle with its wings outstretched. It's the same gesture Sergi always made whenever he stood on the summit of an 8,000er. His legacy lives on through posthumously published books and the documentary K2 Winter, which chronicles that fateful expedition. To this day, the tragedy divides the mountaineering world into two camps. Some argue that Sergi was a victim of the commercial chaos that has no place on K2 in winter. Others are convinced it was just a tragic accident, the kind that no professional, no matter how skilled, is immune to.